The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystalline formations of Zerion Prime, as Captain Zethkar of the Kethvar Imperium adjusted his plasma rifle's targeting system. The weapon hummed with contained energy, its blue-white glow reflecting off his scaled hide. Around him, his hunting party moved with practiced silence through the alien landscape, their boots crunching softly on the planet's unique mineral ground that sparkled like crushed diamonds. "Target confirmed, 2 clicks northeast," whispered Lieutenant Vexthan through the communication implant embedded behind Zethkar's left ear. The voice carried the excitement that all Kethvar felt when closing in on dangerous prey. "The beast is massive, Captain. Easily 15 meters in length, maybe more." Zethkar's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. The Kethvar had built their entire culture around the hunt, around proving their worth by bringing down the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Their homeworld had been stripped of challenging prey centuries ago, forcing them to venture across the stars in search of worthy opponents. This expedition to the remote world of Zerion Prime promised to be their most significant hunt yet. The creature they tracked had been reported by deep space miners, who described it as a nightmarish fusion of predator and something beyond their understanding. Black as the void between stars, with hide thick enough to deflect mining lasers, claws that could rend through reinforced steel, and eyes that seemed to burn with an inner fire. The miners had lost 3 teams before abandoning their operations on Zerion Prime, spreading tales of a creature that moved like liquid shadow and struck with the force of a collapsing star. Perfect prey for the Kethvar. Remember, Zethkar addressed his team through their shared communication network, this creature has already proven it can kill trained miners. Stay information. Wait for my signal before engaging. We take it down together or not at all. The hunting party consisted of 12 elite Kethvar warriors, each selected for their prowess in bringing down dangerous game. They carried the finest weapons their civilization could produce, wore armor that had been tested against the claws and fangs of 100 different predator species, and had trained for this moment for the better part of a standard galactic year. As they crested a ridge overlooking a vast crystalline valley, Zethkar raised his hand in the universal signal to halt. There, in the center of the valley, lay their quarry. The beast was even more magnificent than the reports had suggested. Its obsidian hide rippled with each breath, muscles moving beneath the surface like tectonic plates shifting. The creature's head was massive, easily the size of a small transport vehicle, with a mouth that could swallow a Kethava warrior whole. But what struck Zethkar most was the creature's posture. It wasn't hunting or stalking. Instead, it lay curled in what appeared to be a comfortable resting position, its great head pillowed on its front paws, like some massive lethal pet. "Strange," murmured Sergeant Kickstall, the team's tracker and the most experienced hunter among them. "It's not displaying any aggressive postures. Almost looks peaceful." Zethkar studied the creature through his weapon's scope. Kickstall was right. There was something oddly serene about the beast's demeanor, but that only made it more dangerous. The most successful predators were often the ones that appeared harmless until the moment they struck. "Peaceful predators are the deadliest kind," Zethkar replied. "They've learned to conserve their energy for when it matters most. Everyone, check your targeting systems. We hit it with everything we have, all at once. No warning, no chance for it to react." The hunting party spread out across the ridge, each warrior taking a position that would allow for optimal fire coverage. Their plasma rifles charged with increasing intensity, the weapon's energy cores reaching peak output. Zethkar felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came just before a major kill. This creature would be the prize of his career, a trophy that would elevate his status among the Kethvar elite. "On my mark," Zethkar whispered, his scope's crosshairs centered on the creature's massive head. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 12 plasma rifles fired simultaneously, their combined energy enough to vaporize a small building. The beams struck the creature from multiple angles, and the beast let out a sound unlike anything Zethkar had ever heard. It wasn't a roar of rage or pain. It was something far more disturbing. It sounded almost confused, hurt in a way that went beyond physical damage. The creature attempted to rise, its movements sluggish and disoriented. Dark fluid that might have been blood seeped from multiple wounds across its hide. For a moment, its burning eyes swept across the ridge where the hunting party lay hidden, and Zethkar felt an unexpected chill run down his spine. Those eyes held an intelligence he hadn't expected. Not just animal cunning, but something deeper, something that looked almost like recognition. "Continue firing," Zethkar ordered, pushing aside his momentary unease. "Don't let it recover." The second volley struck the creature center mass, and this time it collapsed completely. The great beast's breathing became labored, each exhale sending small clouds of crystalline dust into the air. Its eyes, which had burned so brightly moments before, began to dim. "Target neutralized," reported Lieutenant Vexthan, lowering his weapon. "Excellent work, Captain. This kill will be remembered in the hunting lodges for generations." Zethkar should have felt the rush of victory, the satisfaction of a successful hunt. Instead, he found himself staring at the dying creature with a growing sense of unease. Something was wrong. The creature's final sounds weren't the death throes of a defeated predator. They were something else entirely, something that reminded him of... "Captain." Sergeant Kickstall's voice cut through his thoughts. "We should move down and confirm the kill. Take tissue samples for analysis. The Hunting Council will want complete biological data." Zethkar nodded, forcing himself back into the role of expedition leader. Whatever his personal feelings about the hunt, he had duties to fulfill. The hunting party began their descent into the crystalline valley, moving carefully over the sharp-edged mineral formations that gave Zerion Prime its unique appearance. As they approached the fallen creature, Zethkar noticed something that made him pause. Around the area where the beast had been resting, the crystalline ground was worn smooth, as if from repeated use. This wasn't a random resting spot. This was a place the creature had returned to regularly. A favorite location. "Kick still," he called to his tracker. "What do you make of these wear patterns?" The sergeant examined the ground carefully, his experienced eyes taking in details that others might miss. "This creature has been using this spot for some time, Captain. Weeks, maybe months. The pattern suggests regular rest periods, always in the same position." He paused, his expression growing troubled. "Captain, this doesn't match the behavioral profile of a hostile predator. This looks more like..." "Like what?" Zethkar demanded. "Like a creature that considered this place home." The word hung in the air between them like an accusation. Zethkar felt his stomach tighten. The Kethvar prided themselves on being honorable hunters. They sought out dangerous predators, creatures that posed a genuine threat to galactic civilization. They didn't hunt animals that were simply trying to live their lives in peace. "Complete the examination," Zethkar ordered, his voice harder than he intended. "Take the samples. We'll let the biological analysis determine what kind of creature this was." As his team worked to document their kill, Zethkar found himself unable to shake the feeling that they had made a terrible mistake. The creature's final sound echoed in his memory. It had sounded so much like a cry for help, like something calling out for someone who would never answer. Above them, Zerion Prime's twin suns continued their eternal dance across the sky, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow over the crystalline landscape. In the distance, small flying creatures that might have been birds or insects went about their daily routines, undisturbed by the violence that had just taken place in their world. But there was something else in the air now. A vibration so low it was felt rather than heard. It seemed to come from the very ground beneath their feet, as if the planet itself was responding to what had happened in the valley. "Captain," Lieutenant Vexton approached with a portable scanner in his hands. "I'm picking up some unusual energy readings from the creature's remains. The biological signature is unlike anything in our databases." "Elaborate," Zethkar replied. Though part of him wasn't sure, he wanted to hear the answer. "The cellular structure is incredibly complex, more complex than it should be for a creature of this type. And there are artificial elements integrated into its biology, microscopic components that appear to be technological in nature." Zethkar felt the bottom drop out of his world. Technological components.
"Yes, sir."
"This creature has been augmented, enhanced. These modifications appear to be medical in nature, life support systems possibly, or monitoring devices." The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. They hadn't killed a wild predator, they had killed someone's companion. Someone's pet, someone's friend. "Pack up," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're leaving. Now." "Captain?" Vexthan looked confused. "Don't we want to complete our documentation?" "This is the largest creature we've ever..." I said, "Pack up." Zethkar's roar echoed across the crystalline valley. "We're leaving this place immediately." But even as his team hurried to comply with his orders, Zethkar knew it was too late. The damage had been done. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone was about to discover that their beloved companion was dead. Someone was about to learn that a team of Kethvar hunters had killed their friend. And if that someone happened to be human, as Zethkar was beginning to suspect, then the galaxy was about to become a very dangerous place for his people. The low vibration in the ground continued, growing stronger with each passing moment. It felt almost like a heartbeat. Or perhaps like the sound of footsteps. Very large footsteps. Getting closer. 3 days had passed since Dr. Sarah Chen last heard from Max, and she was beginning to worry. The massive creature that served as her research companion, guardian, and closest friend had never been away from their shared base camp for more than 2 days. Max was remarkably intelligent, even by the standards of his artificially enhanced species, and he understood the importance of maintaining regular contact. Sarah stood at the edge of her research station's observation deck, a prefabricated structure that had been her home for the past 8 months on Zerion Prime. The deck overlooked the crystalline valleys where she conducted her geological surveys, studying the unique mineral formations that made this world one of the most scientifically valuable discoveries in recent galactic history. The crystals weren't just beautiful, they held properties that could revolutionize energy storage and transmission across the galaxy. Her research was groundbreaking, but it was also dangerous work. Zerion Prime was technically uninhabited, but that didn't mean it was safe. The planet's unique electromagnetic properties played havoc with most technological systems, making communication with the outside galaxy spotty at best. Seismic activity was common, and there were predators in the deeper regions of the crystal caves that could tear apart an unprotected human in seconds. That was why the Terran Research Council had assigned Max to her expedition. The creature was the result of decades of genetic research, a being originally discovered on a world at the edge of human space. The species had been facing extinction when human scientists found them, victims of a planetary catastrophe that had left only a few dozen individuals alive. Through careful genetic therapy and technological integration, the surviving members of the species had been enhanced, their lifespans extended, their intelligence amplified, and their natural abilities augmented with sophisticated biotechnology. Max was the first of his kind to volunteer for deep space research duty. Standing 15 meters long and possessing strength that could move boulders, he was perfectly adapted for the harsh conditions of frontier worlds. But more than that, he was brilliant, loyal, and had become Sarah's closest friend during their months of isolation on Zerion Prime. "Computer," Sarah called to the research station's artificial intelligence system. "Any communication attempts from Max in the past 6 hours?" "Negative, Dr. Chen." The computer replied in its neutral tone. "No signals detected on any frequency. However, electromagnetic interference remains elevated due to the current solar flare activity." Sarah frowned. The solar flares had been particularly intense over the past week, which could explain the communication blackout. But Max knew how to work around electromagnetic interference. His biotechnological implants included communication systems that could penetrate most forms of natural interference. She activated her personal communicator, a device specifically designed to reach Max's implants. "Max, this is Sarah. Please respond." "I'm getting worried about you, big guy." Static filled the channel for several seconds before clearing to reveal only the background noise of Zerion Prime's unique electromagnetic field. No response from Max. Sarah made a decision. She couldn't wait any longer. If Max was in trouble, every hour might count. She began preparing for a search expedition, loading her hoverbike with emergency supplies and the portable scanner array that could track Max's biosignature across vast distances. The hoverbike was one of the few pieces of technology that functioned reliably on Zerion Prime. Its simple electromagnetic levitation system was actually enhanced by the planet's unique field properties, allowing it to carry heavy loads across the crystalline terrain that would be impossible to traverse on foot. As she worked, Sarah found herself thinking about the day she first met Max. She had been terrified, initially. The creature was enormous, with midnight black hide and eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. Her briefings had described him as a research companion. But her first impression had been that she was looking at the galaxy's most perfect predator. That impression had lasted exactly 5 minutes, right up until Max had noticed her nervousness and had done something that defied everything she thought she knew about predatory species. He had made himself smaller. The massive creature had actually lowered himself to the ground and tucked his head down, making himself appear as non-threatening as something his size could possibly be. Then he had looked at her with those burning eyes and, through the translation implant that converted his bioelectrical thoughts into human language, had said, "Please don't be afraid. I'm here to help keep you safe." From that moment on, they had been inseparable. Max had proven to be not just a guardian but a brilliant research partner. His enhanced senses could detect mineral compositions that her instruments missed. His strength allowed them to access research sites that would have been impossible for a human team to reach. And his company had made the isolation of deep space research bearable. More than that, Max had become her friend. During the long evenings when Zerion Prime's twin suns set behind the crystal formations, they would sit together and talk. Max was endlessly curious about human culture, about art and music and literature. Sarah had spent countless hours reading to him from her collection of Earth classics, and watching him try to understand concepts like poetry and humor that were foreign to his species' original nature. He had a favorite spot in the Crystal Valley about 2 days' travel from the research station, a place where the mineral formations created natural amphitheater acoustics, and where Sarah's readings suggested the presence of the most unique crystal structures on the planet. Max would often go there when he needed to think, or when he simply wanted to enjoy the strange beauty of Zerion Prime in solitude. That was where Sarah decided to start her search. The hoverbike scanner array activated as she lifted off from the research station, its sensors immediately beginning to sweep for Max's distinctive biosignature. The reading was complex, a combination of organic life signs and the technological implants that enhanced his abilities. On a normal world, the scanner could detect that signature from orbit. On Zerion Prime, with its electromagnetic interference, she would be lucky to get readings from 20 kilometers away. Sarah pushed the hoverbike to maximum speed as she raced across the crystalline landscape. The terrain blurred beneath her as she followed the route she and Max had traveled together so many times. Crystal formations rose around her like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting and refracting the light of Zerion Prime's twin suns into fantastic patterns of color. Under normal circumstances, Sarah would have slowed down to admire the view. Zerion Prime was undoubtedly one of the most beautiful worlds she had ever visited, but today, the beauty felt ominous. The planet was too quiet, too still. Even the small flying creatures that usually filled the air around the crystal formation seemed to be absent. It took her 3 hours of hard travel to reach the valley where Max's favorite resting spot was located. As she crested the ridge that overlooked the area, Sarah's heart stopped. Max was there, but he wasn't moving. Sarah brought the hoverbike down in a controlled crash, abandoning it the moment it touched the crystalline ground. She ran across the valley floor, her boots slipping and sliding on the smooth mineral surface as she raced toward her friend's still form. Even from a distance, she could see the wounds. Massive holes in Max's hide where something had burned completely through his natural armor. The ground around him was stained with dark fluid that could only be blood. His great head lay pillowed on his front paws in his characteristic resting position. But his eyes, those brilliant burning eyes that had always seemed so alive, were dim and still. "Max!" Sarah's voice echoed across the crystal valley as she dropped to her knees beside her friend's massive head. Her hands found the sensor ports behind his ears, the access points to his biotechnological systems. "Max, can you hear me? Please be alive." Her portable medical scanner beeped frantically as it tried to process the readings from Max's enhanced biology. Most of his vital signs had ceased. Brain activity was minimal. The biotechnological implants that regulated his enhanced physiology were failing one by one. But he was still alive. Barely. "Sarah?" The voice came through her communicator as Max's dying implants managed one final transmission. The voice was weak, distorted by failing systems, but unmistakably her friend. "I'm here, Max. I'm here. What happened to you?" "Hunters," Max's mental voice was fading even as he struggled to communicate. They thought I was dangerous. They didn't know, didn't understand." Sarah's hands flew over her medical equipment, desperately trying to find some way to stabilize Max's condition. But the damage was too extensive. The weapons that had done this hadn't just injured him, they had systematically destroyed his enhanced organs and implant systems. "Who did this to you?" Sarah's voice was tight with grief and growing fury. "Max, tell me who did this." "Kethvar," Max managed. "Hunting party." They were afraid. Didn't listen when I tried to. Sarah felt something cold and terrible settle in her chest. Max had tried to communicate with his attackers. Of course he had. Max always tried to talk his way out of conflicts. He was a gentle soul trapped in the body of a perfect predator, and his first instinct when faced with hostility was always to try to explain that he meant no harm. They had killed him because they were afraid. They had murdered her friend because they couldn't see past what he looked like to understand what he really was. "Sarah." Max's voice was barely a whisper now. Don't blame them. They didn't know. They thought they were protecting." "Shh," Sarah said. tears streaming down her face as she gently stroked the side of Max's great head. "Save your strength. I'm going to get you help. I'm going to—" "No," Max interrupted gently. "Too late for that. But promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't become like them. Promise me you won't let anger make you into something I wouldn't recognize." Sarah wanted to make that promise. Part of her desperately wanted to give Max the peace of mind he was asking for in his final moments. But another part of her, a part that was growing stronger by the second, was already planning exactly what she was going to do to the HFY hunting party that had murdered her friend. "I promise," she lied, because it was what Max needed to hear. Max's eyes seemed to brighten for just a moment, and Sarah could swear she saw a smile in his expression. "Good. Hey. I'm glad you were my friend, Sarah. These months with you. Happiest time of my life." "Mine too," Sarah whispered. And this time she wasn't lying. Max's eyes dimmed one final time, and the biosignature on Sarah's scanner flatlined completely. Her friend, her companion, her guardian, was gone. For several minutes, Sarah knelt beside Max's body in complete silence, letting the reality of his death sink in. Then she activated her communicator and sent a priority message to the Terran Research Council headquarters. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen on Zerion Prime. I'm reporting the murder of Research Companion Designation MAX 774. The perpetrators have been identified as a HFY hunting party. I am requesting immediate extraction and full military investigation of this incident." She paused, looking down at Max's peaceful expression. He looked like he was simply sleeping, waiting for her to wake him up so they could continue their research together. "Additionally," Sarah continued, her voice growing cold,
"I am formally requesting transfer to the Terran Defense Force.
I believe I can provide valuable intelligence regarding HFY tactical capabilities and hunting practices." Sarah Chen had been a scientist, a researcher, someone who believed in the peaceful exploration of the galaxy and the advancement of knowledge for the benefit of all species. But that person had died here in this Crystal Valley along with her best friend. What rose from that death was something new. Something that the HFY Imperium was going to learn to fear. Admiral James Harrison of the Terran Defense Force stood in the observation lounge of the TDF Retribution, watching the crystalline surface of Zerion Prime grow larger on the main view screen. The planet looked deceptively peaceful from orbit, its surface glittering like a jewel against the darkness of space. But Harrison knew that somewhere down there, one of humanity's most faithful companions had been murdered by alien hunters who saw him as nothing more than a trophy. The report from Dr. Sarah Chen had reached Earth 3 weeks ago, transmitted through the expensive quantum communication array that connected the outer research stations with the core worlds. The message had been brief, clinical, and absolutely devastating in its implications. A Terran research companion had been killed by a HFY hunting party. The companion in question was Max-4, one of the enhanced creatures that represented humanity's greatest success in interspecies cooperation and genetic research. What made the situation even more serious was who Max 774 had been in life. The creature wasn't just another research companion. He was the first of his species to volunteer for deep space service, a being whose intelligence and loyalty had made him a minor celebrity among the scientific community. Max had personally saved the lives of 17 human researchers during his 5-year service record, and had contributed to advances in xenogeology, xenobiology, and deep space exploration that had expanded human knowledge immeasurably. And now he was dead, killed by aliens who saw him as nothing more than dangerous prey. Admiral, Commander Lisa Park, Harrison's aide-de-camp, approached with a data tablet in her hands. "We've received the preliminary investigation report from the ground team." Harrison accepted the tablet and began reviewing the findings. The investigation team had been on Zerion Prime for 2 days, conducting a thorough analysis of the scene where Max 774 had been killed. What they found painted a disturbing picture of the events that had led to his death. "Multiple plasma weapon impacts," Harrison read aloud. 12 distinct firing positions. Coordinated attack pattern consistent with professional military or hunting operations. He looked up at Commander Park. "They didn't just kill him. They executed him." "Yes, sir. The ballistics analysis suggests they hit him with everything they had all at once. No warning, no attempt at communication. They treated him like a target in a firing exercise." Harrison continued reading. The report detailed the evidence of Max's regular use of the valley as a resting place, the wear patterns that showed he had been visiting the location for months. It was clear that the creature had considered the area his home, a place where he could relax and enjoy the unique beauty of Zarian Prime between research missions. Any evidence that Max tried to defend himself? Harrison asked. None, sir. According to the forensic analysis, he never even had a chance to stand up. The attack was so sudden and overwhelming that he died in his sleeping position. Harrison set the tablet down and stared out at the planet below. In his 30-year career with the Terran Defense Force, he had seen humanity fight wars against aggressive alien species, defend colonies from raiders, and negotiate peace treaties with former enemies. But this was different. This wasn't a war or a territorial dispute. This was murder, pure and simple. Where is Dr. Chen now? Harrison asked. In briefing room 3, sir. She's been waiting for your arrival. Harrison nodded. The woman's personnel file made for interesting reading. Dr. Sarah Chen had been one of the TDF's most promising young officers before transferring to the Civilian Scientific Corps 5 years ago. Her specializations in xenogeology and combat tactics made her an ideal candidate for frontier research, and her psychological profile indicated the kind of mental flexibility needed to work with enhanced companion species. But the woman Harrison was about to meet wasn't the same person who had left for Zarian Prime 8 months ago. According to the psychological evaluation conducted during her extraction from the planet, Dr. Chen had undergone what the analysts called a fundamental personality shift. The grief of losing her companion had transformed her from a peaceful researcher into something much more dangerous. The briefing room was spartanly furnished, containing only a conference table and the standard view screens used for tactical discussions. Dr. Chen sat at one end of the table, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes focused on the surface of Zarian Prime, visible through the room's single porthole. Harrison was surprised by her appearance. He had expected to find a woman consumed by grief, perhaps unstable from the trauma of losing her companion. Instead, he found someone who appeared to be in complete control of herself. Dr. Chen's posture was military straight, her expression calm and focused. Only her eyes betrayed the intensity of what she was feeling. They burned with a cold fire that reminded Harrison of seasoned combat veterans he had known. Dr. Chen, Harrison said as he took a seat across from her. I'm Admiral Harrison. I want to express my personal condolences for the loss of Max. I've read his service record. He was an extraordinary being. He was my friend, Sarah replied, her voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of steel. And he was murdered by aliens who couldn't see past their own prejudices to understand what he really was. Tell me about the Kefvar hunting party, Harrison said. What do you know about their capabilities, their tactics? Sarah activated the room's main display screen, which immediately showed a three-dimensional representation of the Crystal Valley where Max had been killed. Red markers indicated the positions from which the Kefvar hunters had fired their weapons. 12 hunters, all armed with military-grade plasma rifles, Sarah began. They positioned themselves for maximum coverage and fired simultaneously. Professional-level coordination, suggesting either military training or extensive hunting experience. She manipulated the display to show the trajectory of the plasma bolts that had killed Max. They didn't take any chances. Every shot was aimed at vital areas. This wasn't a hunting party looking for sport or glory. This was an execution squad. Harrison studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Kefvar had demonstrated a level of military precision that suggested their hunting parties were far more than civilian sporting expeditions. What do you know about Kefvar culture? Harrison asked. They're a warrior species that has built their entire civilization around the concept of the hunt, Sarah replied. But they've exhausted the dangerous prey on their own worlds, so they've taken their hunts to other planets. They seek out the galaxy's most dangerous predators and kill them as tests of skill and courage. And they saw Max as a dangerous predator. Sarah's expression hardened. Max wouldn't hurt a fly unless it was threatening someone he cared about. He was the gentlest soul I've ever known, human or otherwise. But the Kefvar looked at him and saw only a monster. Harrison was beginning to understand why Dr. Chen had requested transfer to the TDF. The woman wasn't just seeking justice for her friend's death, she was planning something much more comprehensive. Dr. Chen, Harrison said carefully, what exactly are you proposing we do about this situation? Sarah stood and moved to the porthole, looking down at the crystalline surface of Zarian Prime. The Kefvar considered themselves to be the galaxy's greatest hunters. They pride themselves on their ability to track and kill dangerous prey. She turned back to Harrison, and he saw something in her eyes that made him understand why the psychological evaluation had flagged her as potentially dangerous. I propose we show them what it feels like to be hunted. Harrison felt a chill run down his spine. Explain. Sarah returned to the conference table and activated a new set of displays. These showed star charts, shipping routes, and what appeared to be intelligence reports on Kethvar military capabilities. I've spent the past 3 weeks studying everything we know about the Kethvar Imperium, she said. Their hunting parties aren't random expeditions. They're organized, funded by their government, and equipped with military-grade hardware. What happened to Max wasn't an isolated incident. It's part of a systematic campaign to hunt down and kill the galaxy's most unique creatures. The displays showed a disturbing pattern. Over the past 2 years, Kethvar hunting parties had killed dozens of rare and endangered species across multiple star systems. Many of these creatures had been under the protection of galactic conservation treaties. Some had been the last of their kind. They're driving entire species to extinction for sport, Sarah continued. And they're getting away with it because most of their victims can't fight back. But humans can fight back, Harrison observed. Humans can do more than fight back, Sarah said, and Harrison heard something in her voice that made him understand why her psychological profile had been flagged. Humans can hunt hunters. Harrison studied the intelligence reports Sarah had compiled. The woman had done remarkable work in a very short time, gathering detailed information on Kethvar hunting operations, their equipment, their tactics, and their organizational structure. You're proposing military action against the Kethvar Imperium, Harrison said. I'm proposing that we treat them exactly the way they've been treating everyone else, Sarah replied. They want to be hunters? Fine. Let them experience what it's like to be prey. Harrison was quiet for several moments, considering the implications of what Sarah was suggesting. A military campaign against the Kethvar would be a massive undertaking, requiring resources and political will that might not be available. But the murder of Max 774 had created a situation that couldn't be ignored. The Terran Council is going to want more than revenge, Harrison said finally. They're going to want a strategic justification for any military action we take. Sarah activated another display, this one showing the location of human colonies and research stations near Kethvar hunting territories. Max wasn't their first victim with ties to humanity, and he won't be their last. There are 17 human research teams currently working in systems where Kethvar hunting parties have been active. How many more companions are we going to lose before we do something about it? She had a point. The enhanced companion species that worked with human researchers represented years of genetic research and technological development. Each one was irreplaceable, not just as a scientific achievement, but as a living being with thoughts, feelings, and relationships with their human partners. What kind of operation are you envisioning? Harrison asked. I want to infiltrate their hunting operations, Sarah said. Learn their methods, identify their leadership, and then systematically dismantle their entire hunting culture. Harrison raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a job for special forces, not a xenogeologist. I'm not just a xenogeologist anymore, Sarah replied. I'm someone who understands how the Kethvar think, someone who knows their tactics and their weaknesses, and I'm someone who has a very personal reason to see this through to the end. Harrison looked at the woman across from him and made a decision that would change the course of human-Kethvar relations forever. Dr. Chen, how would you feel about a field commission in the Terran Defense Force? Sarah's smile was cold as the void between stars. I thought you'd never ask, Admiral. In the depths of space, the TDF Retribution continued its orbit around Zirion Prime, its crew unaware that they were witnessing the birth of something new in human military doctrine. For the first time in their history, humans were going to war not for territory or resources or political advantage, but for something much simpler and much more dangerous. They were going to war for revenge. 6 months after the murder of Max. 7-4. Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force stood in the command center of a heavily modified stealth frigate designated the TDF Nemesis. The ship's black hull was designed to be nearly invisible to most scanning systems, and its internal layout had been reconfigured to support extended covert operations in alien territory. This was her ship, her crew, and her mission. The Nemesis had been Sarah's home for the past 4 months, as she and her hand-picked team had infiltrated Kethvar space, studying their hunting operations and preparing for the justice that was long overdue. What they had discovered during their reconnaissance was far worse than anything the Terran Council had imagined. Captain, Lieutenant Commander David Torres, her tactical officer, approached with the latest intelligence reports. We've identified the hunting party responsible for Max's death. They're currently operating in the Vexthor system, 3 days from our current position. Sarah accepted the datapad and reviewed the information. The hunting party was led by Captain Zefkar, the same Kethvar who had given the order to fire on Max without warning or provocation. According to their intelligence, Zefkar's party had killed 16 more rare creatures since leaving Zirian Prime, including 3 more enhanced companions who had been working with various research teams. Status of the research teams in that system? Sarah asked. Evacuated 2 days ago on our recommendation, Taurus replied. The official story is equipment failure requiring emergency extraction. The Kethavar don't know we're on to them. Sarah nodded approvingly. One of the first lessons she had learned about covert operations was that protecting innocents always took priority over mission objectives. The research teams in the Vexthor system had been extracted under cover stories that would keep them safe, while giving the Nemesis a free hand to operate. What about local fauna in the area? Sarah asked. That's the problem, Captain. The Vexthor system is home to the Sylvan Cloud Riders, one of the last remaining populations of aerial cetaceans in the galaxy. They're not dangerous to anyone, but they're magnificent creatures. Exactly the kind of thing the Kethvar consider trophy prey. Sarah felt the familiar cold anger settling in her chest. The Sylvan Cloud Riders were massive aerial creatures that lived in the upper atmospheres of gas giant planets, feeding on atmospheric microorganisms and living lives of incredible beauty and grace. They were intelligent social creatures that had been nearly driven to extinction by hunting and habitat destruction. The small population in the Vexthor system represented one of the last hopes for the species' survival. How long before the Kethvar reached the Cloud Rider habitat? Sarah asked. 18 hours assuming they maintain their current course and speed. Sarah made her decision. All hands to battle stations. We're going to intercept them before they reach the Cloud Riders. Captain, Torres said carefully. Our orders were to observe and gather intelligence. This would be our first direct action against a Kethvar force. Sarah turned to face her tactical officer, and Torres took an unconscious step backward from the intensity in her eyes. Lieutenant Commander, those creatures in the Vexthor system are exactly what Max was, intelligent beings living peaceful lives, guilty of nothing except being born into bodies that ignorant aliens find threatening. I will not allow another massacre. Yes, ma'am, Torres replied immediately. I'll prep the crew for combat operations. As Torres left to carry out her orders, Sarah remained in the command center, studying the tactical display that showed the Kethvar hunting ship's approach vector toward the gas giant where the Cloud Riders lived. The Kethvar vessel was a typical hunting ship, heavily armed but designed more for fighting large creatures than for ship-to-ship combat. The Nemesis, on the other hand, was a military vessel designed specifically for stealth operations and precision strikes. Captain, Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos, the ship's communications specialist, approached her station. Incoming message from Admiral Harrison. Sarah activated her personal communicator, and Admiral Harrison's voice filled her command headset. Captain Chen, what's the status of your mission? We've located the hunting party responsible for Max's death, sir. They're currently approaching another potential target. I'm moving to intercept. There was a pause before Harrison responded. Captain, I want to remind you that your mission parameters include the capture of Kethvar personnel for intelligence purposes. Dead hunters can't answer questions. Sarah's jaw tightened. She understood the Admiral's concerns. But she also understood something that the military leadership back on Earth didn't seem to grasp. This wasn't just about gathering intelligence or even about preventing future attacks. This was about making the Kethvar understand that their actions had consequences. Understood, Admiral. I'll prioritize prisoner capture when tactically feasible. See that you do, Captain. Harrison out. Sarah deactivated her communicator and turned her attention back to the tactical situation. The Nemesis was closing rapidly on the Kethvar hunting vessel, using its advanced stealth systems to remain undetected until the last possible moment. Captain, Ensign Kelly Park, her sensor operator, called from her station. The Kethvar ship has dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're beginning their approach to the gas giant. Sarah moved to the main tactical display and watched as the Kethvar vessel, designated Hunter's Pride, according to their intelligence files, began its final approach toward the upper atmosphere where the Cloud Riders lived. On the display, she could see the Cloud Riders themselves, massive creatures that moved through the gas giant's atmosphere like living starships, their bioluminescent bodies creating patterns of light that were visible even from orbit. Beautiful, whispered Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, the ship's science officer. I've never seen anything like them. Sarah had to agree. The Cloud Riders were magnificent, their movements graceful beyond description as they flowed through the thick atmosphere of the gas giant. They were ancient creatures, survivors from an earlier epoch of galactic evolution, and watching them was like observing living poetry. And the Kethvar were going to slaughter them for sport. "Take us in," Sarah ordered. "Full stealth approach. I want us positioned between the hunters and their prey." The Nemesis moved like a shadow through space, its advanced propulsion systems allowing it to match course and speed with the hunter's pride without revealing its presence. Sarah watched as the Kethvar ship began launching hunting pods, small atmospheric craft designed to allow hunters to enter the gas giant's atmosphere and engage their prey at close range. 12 hunting pods deployed. Ensign Park reported. "They're descending toward the Cloud Rider population." Sarah felt her hands clench into fists as she watched the tactical display. This was exactly what had happened to Max. A group of innocent creatures living their lives in peace, suddenly attacked by predators who saw them as nothing more than trophies. But this time, the prey wasn't defenseless. "Target the hunter's pride," Sarah ordered. "Disable their engines and weapon systems. I want them dead in space." "Target acquired," Torres responded from the tactical station. Firing. The Nemesis unleashed a precisely targeted barrage of plasma bolts, striking the Kethvar vessel's engine nacelles and weapon arrays with surgical precision. The hunter's pride shuddered under the impact, its lights flickering as critical systems went offline. "Unknown vessel." The communication system crackled to life as the Kethvar captain attempted to hail his attackers. "This is Captain Zefkar of the Kethvar vessel Hunter's Pride. You have committed an act of war against the Kethvar Imperium." Sarah activated the ship's main communication array, ensuring that her response would reach not just the Hunter's Pride, but also the hunting pods that were still descending toward the Cloud Riders. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," she announced, her voice carrying across the communication channels with absolute authority. "You are guilty of the murder of an innocent being under the protection of the Terran Republic. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." "Terran?" Zefkar's voice carried a note of confusion. "What interest do humans have in this hunt? These creatures pose no threat to your kind." Sarah's voice turned cold as Arctic ice. "The creature you murdered on Zerion Prime was under human protection. His name was Max and he was my friend. You killed him because you couldn't see past your own prejudices to understand what he really was." There was silence on the communication channel for several seconds before Zethkar responded. "The beast on Zerion Prime was your companion?" "He was a living being with thoughts and feelings and dreams for the future," Sarah replied. "He was intelligent, gentle, and loyal." "And you murdered him because you were afraid of something you didn't understand." Sarah could almost hear Zethkar's world shifting beneath him. The great hunter who had built his reputation on bringing down dangerous prey was beginning to realize that his greatest kill had actually been the murder of an innocent. "The creature," Zethkar said slowly. "It tried to communicate with us. We thought it was some kind of trick, a predator attempting to lower our guard." "It was Max trying to tell you that he meant no harm," Sarah said. "He was trying to prevent exactly what happened. He died trying to make peace with you." The communication channel fell silent again, and Sarah used the pause to check on the hunting pods that were still descending toward the Cloud Riders. "The hunting pods have reached the Cloud Riders," Ensign Park reported, "but they've stopped moving. I think they're listening to our conversation." Sarah activated the general communication channel again. "Attention Kethvar hunting party. You have a choice. You can continue with your attack and face the same fate as your mother ship. Or you can return to your vessel and surrender to Terran justice." "And if we surrender?" one of the pod pilots asked. "What happens to us?" Sarah considered her words carefully. She had been authorized to take prisoners for intelligence purposes, but her real goal was much simpler. She wanted the Kethvar to understand that their actions had consequences. "You'll be tried for the murder of an innocent being," Sarah replied. "But you'll be tried according to human law, which means you'll be given the chance to defend yourselves. You'll be treated better than you treated Max." Captain Zethkar's voice returned to the communication channel. "Captain Chen, I need to know something. Did the creature suffer?" Sarah felt her throat tighten as she remembered the last moments of Max's life, the way he had struggled to forgive his killers even as he lay dying. "Yes," she said simply. "He suffered. And his last thoughts were hoping that his death wouldn't turn me into something he wouldn't recognize." "Ah, I see," Zefkar said quietly. "And have his hopes been fulfilled?" Sarah looked around the command center of the Nemesis, at the crew of trained soldiers who were prepared to fight and die in the name of justice for a murdered friend. She thought about the months of planning that had gone into this moment, the careful preparation that had led them to this confrontation.
I don't know, she admitted.
Ask me again when this is over. One by one, the Kethvar hunting pods began returning to their mothership. The Cloud Riders, perhaps sensing that the danger had passed, continued their graceful dance through the gas giant's atmosphere, their bioluminescent bodies creating patterns of light that seemed almost celebratory. All hunting pods have returned, Torres reported. The hunter's pride is requesting permission to surrender. Sarah nodded. Grant them permission to surrender. Prepare boarding teams for prisoner transfer. As the crew of the Nemesis prepared to take custody of the Kethvar hunters, Sarah found herself thinking about Max's final request. He had asked her not to let anger turn her into something he wouldn't recognize. She wondered if he would approve of what she had become, a hunter of hunters. Someone who fought to protect the innocent by hunting down those who preyed upon them. She hoped he would understand that sometimes the only way to stop a predator was to become a better predator yourself. 1 year after the capture of Captain Zethkar and his hunting party, the galaxy looked very different than it had before. Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen of the newly formed Terran Guardian Corps, stood before the Galactic Council Assembly on the neutral world of Nexus Station, addressing an audience that included representatives from over 300 different species. The transformation had been remarkable. What had started as a mission to capture a single group of alien hunters had evolved into something much larger and more significant. The Terran Guardian Corps, under Sarah's leadership, had become the galaxy's premier force for protecting endangered species and enforcing interspecies conservation laws. Honorable delegates. Sarah addressed the assembly, her voice carrying the authority that came from a year of successful operations. I stand before you today to present the annual report of the Guardian Corps activities. The massive amphitheater was filled with beings of every conceivable shape and size, from the crystalline Zarathi to the gaseous Vorthak collective.
What united them all was a growing recognition that the universe's rarest and most magnificent creatures needed protection from those who would exploit or destroy them.
In the past 12 months, Sarah continued, Guardian Corps forces have prevented the extinction of 17 endangered species, arrested over 200 illegal hunters, and established protected zones around 43 critical habitats.
The statistics were impressive, but they didn't tell the whole story. The real victory was in how the galaxy's perspective had changed. The capture and trial of the Kethvar hunting party had sent shockwaves through the hunting communities of dozens of species. For the first time, hunters had faced real consequences for their actions. Sarah activated the assembly's main display, which showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with various colored zones indicating different levels of protection and Guardian Corps activity. The most significant development, Sarah announced, has been the voluntary reformation of the Kethvar Imperium's hunting culture. The display zoomed in to show Kethvar space, where a remarkable transformation had taken place. After the trial and conviction of Captain Zethkar's hunting party, the Kethvar government had been forced to confront the reality of what their hunters had been doing across the galaxy. The evidence presented during the trial had shown that Kethvar hunting parties had been responsible for the extinction of over 30 species in the past decade alone. The revelation had sparked a civil war within Kethvar society between those who supported traditional hunting practices and those who demanded reform.
The reformers had won, led by an unexpected figure, Captain Zethkar himself.
Captain Zethkar, Sarah continued, has spent the past year working with Guardian Corps personnel to develop new protocols for Kethvar hunting expeditions.
Instead of hunting endangered species, Kethvar hunting parties now serve as protection forces for threatened creatures. It had been a remarkable transformation. Zethkar, who had been sentenced to 20 years in Terran prison for his role in Max's death, had been granted early release in exchange for his cooperation in reforming Kethvar hunting culture. The former hunter had become one of the Guardian Corps' most effective allies, using his knowledge of hunting tactics to protect rather than destroy. The former Captain Zethkar is here today, Sarah announced, gesturing to a section of the assembly where the Kethvar delegation sat. I would like him to address the assembly regarding the changes in his people's approach to interspecies relations. Zethkar rose from his seat, his scaled hide bearing the scars of his time in prison and the conflicts that had followed his reformation. The Kethvar looked older than he had a year ago, but there was something in his posture that suggested a fundamental change in his character. Honorable delegates, Zethkar began, his voice carrying through the assembly's translation systems. I stand before you as someone who has committed great sins against the innocent creatures of the galaxy. For most of my life, I believed that strength was measured by the ability to kill dangerous prey. I was wrong. The assembly listened in rapt attention as the former hunter continued his address. The creature I killed on Zerion Prime was not a monster. His name was Max, and he was a being of great intelligence and kindness. He tried to communicate with my hunting party, tried to prevent the violence that followed. Instead of listening, we killed him, because we were afraid of what we didn't understand. Zethkar's voice carried a note of deep regret that resonated even through the translation systems. My people have been hunters for thousands of years. We believed that we were demonstrating our courage by facing dangerous prey, but there is no courage in killing the innocent. There is no honor in destroying what is rare and beautiful. The HFY delegation shifted uncomfortably as their former military leader continued his confession. With the help of Admiral Chen and the Guardian Corps, my people are learning a new way. We are learning to be protectors instead of destroyers. Our hunting parties now serve as guardians for endangered species, using our skills to defend rather than attack. Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions as she listened to Zethkar's speech. The transformation of the man who had killed Max was remarkable, but it couldn't bring her friend back. Nothing could do that. But perhaps Max's death had served a purpose if it led to the protection of countless other creatures who might otherwise have faced the same fate. The Guardian Corps has shown us, Zethkar continued, that true strength lies in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. True courage is found in standing against those who would harm the innocent. My people are still learning these lessons, but we are committed to becoming worthy of the second chance we have been given. As Zethkar returned to his seat, Sarah took the podium again to address the final item on her presentation. Delegates, there is one more matter I wish to discuss with you today. The main display changed to show a new star system, one that had been recently discovered in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. The system contained 7 planets, including 2 that showed signs of complex ecosystems and potentially intelligent life. The Zerion Memorial System, Sarah announced, has been designated as the galaxy's first fully protected ecosystem preserve. No hunting, no mining, no colonization will be permitted in this system. It will serve as a sanctuary for endangered species and a memorial to all the creatures who have been lost to senseless violence. The system had been named in honor of Zerion Prime, where Max had lived and died. Sarah had personally overseen the selection of species that would be relocated to the preserve, choosing creatures that were on the verge of extinction and giving them a chance to rebuild their populations in safety. The first residents of the Zerion Memorial System, Sarah continued, will be the surviving members of Max's species. 14 individuals who will have the chance to live and reproduce without fear of hunters or habitat destruction. It was fitting, Sarah thought, that Max's own people would be among the first to benefit from the protection that his death had made possible. The enhanced creatures who had served alongside human researchers would finally have a place where they could live without fear. Additionally, Sarah announced, the Guardian Corps has established research stations throughout the preserve, staffed by volunteers from across the galaxy. These researchers will study the preserved ecosystems and work to develop new methods for protecting endangered species. As Sarah concluded her presentation, she looked out at the assembled delegates and saw something that would have been impossible a year ago. Representatives from species that had once been bitter enemies were sitting together, united in their commitment to protecting the galaxy's most vulnerable creatures. The transformation wasn't complete, and there would undoubtedly be setbacks along the way, but something fundamental had changed. After the assembly concluded, Sarah found herself on Nexus Station's observation deck, looking out at the stars and thinking about Max. The enhanced creature who had been her friend and companion would have been amazed by what his death had accomplished. The galaxy was becoming a safer place for creatures like him, and that was a legacy worth having. Admiral, a familiar voice said behind her. Sarah turned to see Captain Zethkar approaching, his movements careful and respectful. Captain, Sarah acknowledged. The relationship between them was complex, built on a foundation of shared grief and mutual respect that had developed over the past year. I wanted to thank you, Zethkar said, not just for the mercy you showed my people, but for helping us find a better path. Sarah studied the former hunter's face, seeing genuine remorse and determination in his expression. Max would have wanted this, she said finally. He believed that everyone deserved a chance to be better than they were. I hope someday to be worthy of his forgiveness, Zethkar replied. Sarah nodded. Keep protecting the innocent, Captain. That's the best way to honor his memory. As Zethkar left to rejoin his delegation, Sarah remained on the observation deck, watching the ships of various species departing Nexus Station to carry the message of the Guardian Corps to their home worlds. The galaxy was changing, slowly but surely, and perhaps that change would ensure that no other creature would suffer Max's fate. In the distance, a small transport ship was preparing to depart for the Zerion Memorial System, carrying the first group of researchers and protected species to their new sanctuary. Sarah watched until the ship disappeared into the star-filled darkness, carrying with it the hope that Max's death had not been in vain. The beast was dead, but from his death had come something beautiful. A galaxy where strength was measured not by the ability to destroy, but by the courage to protect. Max would have approved.